Good evening, Gary Eminent with Dale Wetzel here at Peacock Alley. You're listening to the Legislature today. So Dale, we're here at Peacock Alley. This is day number 4 of the week, so we've had a long week just getting the show off the air and not off the air. Yeah,
yes.
they're going to have.
We're working on getting it off.
They're going to have us off the air. So they might keep this up. But so we, you and I will be hitting this first half hour talking about a lot of things going on at the Legislature. There's a lot been happening. I'm kind of excited to hear what's happened with that refinery bill and all the higher ed stuff. There's been a lot of interest. But first of all, being at Peacock Alley, the historic Peacock Alley, tonight's wing night, right wing and left wing. And by the way, I will mention that last week you guys were wrong because the right wings are the naked wings. And Scott was screwed up. He was saying the right wings were the breaded and back and forth. So
anyway, the right wings are naked wings? Are you sure about
right.
that?
I am positive.
Okay.
And the breaded are the left wings. So
really?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to correct you guys.
I guess what my thought would be is that I don't think that you can draw conclusions about a person's political convictions because they order breaded wings or naked wings, because I think it would be entirely possible to be a fervent left winger and prefer your wings without breading, which would make which according to the calculus here would make them a right winger, even though they are politically a left winger.
Yeah, I would guess that's probably pretty accurate. Now, the biggest thing is, I suppose, Dale Zimmerman, who I guess is down getting some big award. We can't talk about that, but I guess he's down.
And who is Dale
Florida.
Zimmerman?
Dale Zimmerman's the owner. He and his wife Melody.
The owner
of Peacock Alley. They're down in Florida for a big award with some folks, and I think they're going to be back with a big announcement. So I noticed the chef's gone, and even though I had a steak here last night. By the way, if you like steak, I had a filet last night. I did not even need to have my knife. It was phenomenal. It was a good piece of meat. And then they have this cowboy rib steak with the bone in. It's not on the menu, but you can get it. And I know a good friend of mine had that next to me, and it was a big serving. So we had a good meal here. So if you're hungry, if you want to have just some wings, they're $5 for 10 wings down here at Peacock Alley.
And that's quite a deal. And there's quite a selection of sauces, and I've always been debating about whether, like, Thai peanut sauce is a liberal or conservative.
Yeah, wing sauce. So that's the challenge of dealing with all the different types of sauces that go with that. But, Dale, so let's talk about what happened today at the Legislature. And I'm going to kind of jump in a little bit now and then and just kind of, try to get a handle of some of the things. I found some. Well, you shoot away at the priority, and I'll jump in when I got a question. How's that sound?
Sure. One of the things that happened, it really wasn't a legislative issue so much as it happened at the Capitol with a lot of legislators watching. There was an announcement that MDU Resources Group and a Indiana company called Calumet, which is a specialty refinery products processor, are going to be opening a diesel fuel refinery in Dickinson, actually just south of Dickinson. They hope to begin producing oil at the end of next year.
Now, one of my questions, Dale, is if they're going to produce this diesel out there, and I'm one of the partners. We're doing a truck stop out in the Grassy Butte area, and we're calling it Sweet Crude. And so it's going to be a travel center with lots of food and trucks and have a lot of parking, all those kind of things. Now, will we be able to buy the diesel that they produce there? Are they going to put it in the pipeline and ship it somewhere? Do you have any idea what they're saying for retail?
They say that they're going to sell the fuel in western North Dakota. They're going to be what this refinery will be doing. It'll be processing 20,000 barrels of oil each day, and making approximately 7,000 barrels each day of diesel fuel. The demand in North Dakota for diesel fuel is approximately 53,000 barrels a day, and it's supposed to go up to maybe 75,000 barrels in the next 15 years.
Now, that 53, is that statewide? That
yes,
demand is in North Dakota? Okay, gotcha.
Yes. So we're talking about a refinery that's going to produce an additional 7,000 barrels of diesel fuel. That's not, it's more than a tenth of the market, about an eighth of the market actually. And so it is a significant contribution to the diesel fuel market, but the developers of the plant don't think it's enough to affect the price, in other words, give us cheaper diesel fuel, although I imagine it would help provide a more assured supply because, as you know, in western North Dakota, it's not uncommon to run out of diesel during high demand periods because the supply network is not as developed as it will be if you have a diesel fuel plant sitting there.
You know, one of the things, Dale, that I'm aware of, the Freilichs, the families that have MVP, Missouri Valley Petroleum, I know, and then there's Cenex, of course, that's Minnesota company, but they supply, you see a lot of the Cenex stores that are, been supplying farmers, etc. But I've been told, like, Cenex is not willing to bring on any more customers, meaning retailers that would want diesel because they have none. And so they're just worried about just supplying their existing retail locations. And I've heard they've had to bring in a rail car diesel just because they can't support it and bring it into the Tesoro refinery here in Bismarck. So that's good news for western North Dakota, and frankly, for all North Dakotans.
Yeah, it's good news anytime you can get an additional supplier of diesel fuel. Now, this is a project that they hope to begin construction in April of this year.
Wow.
And they hope to have their necessary permits in hand by the end of this month. They hope to have the refinery operating by 2014, the end of 2014. And aside from diesel fuel, they're going to be making naphtha.
Now, what in the world's that?
Naphtha is it's a solvent. It's what it's sold for. There's a great demand for it in Canada because Canada produces tar sand oil, which is very thick and viscous, as the name implies. And what the naphtha is used for is to, excuse me, it's used for to thin the oil so that you can push it through a pipeline. And a lot of naphtha is used in the Keystone pipeline, the existing Keystone pipeline, to pipe the oil from the Canadian tar sands to the Midwest. And they want to use naphtha or make naphtha, and also a series of chemicals that are known by it's a particular name, and I don't recall what it is, but they're byproducts of petroleum that are used to make chapstick. They're used to make WD-40. They're used to make motor oil, and this is where Calumet comes in, the Indiana company that's a partner with MDU Resources in this project. They are developers of specialty products that are made from petroleum and or ingredients for those specialty products, and that's one of the reasons why they're into this project themselves.
Dale, are they going to have to, as they do this, is it required of them to, is there a lot of hearing things they have to, like with coal-fired plant? I mean, it's a long process going to PSC and stuff, but how does that differ in doing a small diesel refinery? And I heard there's been rumors of doing more. I've heard the reservation, they've looked up at Newtown having some on and off. Even you've heard different locations.
Well, the reservation, the three affiliated tribes has the necessary permits in hand to build a refinery of their own. And they intend to do that as soon as they get the financing, which is the tricky part at this point. As far as excuse me, as far as what the MDU project is concerned, they have most of their permits in hand. I mean, there is not going to be like a long, drawn-out period of public hearings or things of that nature. They have already done quite a bit of the spade work in terms of being able to begin. All they need really is an air permit, which they expect to get this month. And it is a small, as refineries go, it is a small refinery. It's only going to process 20,000 barrels a day. I mean, the Tesoro refinery processes about 3 times that much.
I was going to ask you.
And so it's a small project. It's going to be south of Dickinson. It's going to employ about 100 people permanently.
Wow. And
construction employment obviously will be much more than that. And we're talking about a $300 million investment, and it's apparently just.
So what I wonder is, are they looking for, Dale, funding, or do they just have to? Is it part of just the hearing process that they were in?
They don't need. The only reason they were at the Capitol was to announce the project. The legislature has nothing to do with this.
Gotcha. Okay.
I asked the question at the news conference. They're not looking for any special legislation. They're not looking for any economic development aid. They're not looking for any tax breaks that aren't already in state law. I mean, there already are tax incentives in state law to encourage the construction of refineries, and they're going to avail themselves of those, but they're not going to have anything different. There is a project that's been kind of grinding away up in Williston, actually south and west of Williston near Trenton, to build a refinery there. But the owners of that, or the developers of that project, they want tax incentives basically to help them make a profit, and the tax incentives, as they've been explained to me, are really pretty difficult to, frankly, to understand. And I doubt that the legislature is going to go running to give these guys tax breaks when MDU and their partner are ready to go. They've got their financing, they've got everything they need. All they need is a permit, and they're going to be able to start building here shortly in the span of a few months. And I think that legislators will look at that and say, well, why is it we need to jack around with these special tax breaks for this other outfit that, we don't really know what they're doing?
Well, we were just in Trenton this weekend, weren't we? We were looking at that water depot, so there's a lot of activity going on at Lowtown.
Yes, it is. And, that project's been kind of grinding away for a long time, and who knows where it goes or what its prospects are. It did result in the introduction of legislation that would have given a substantial tax break for oil that was sold to a refinery in North Dakota that in turn turned it into fuel, and that bill came crashing down because the prevailing wisdom is that refinery development in North Dakota isn't a matter of the tax climate being oppressive. It's a matter of regulatory hurdles being fairly high and not easily surmountable. And what the advantage of the diesel refinery is that it's, according to the developers, and I have not tried to verify these claims yet because I just heard them today, but they were saying that this refinery is going to be exceptionally clean operating, going to produce exceptionally clean fuel. The biggest pollutant, if you could call it that, is carbon dioxide, which, of course, is what we produce when we breathe in and out. It's not like sulfur or some other problematic substance. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this project progresses, because it was a bit interesting to hear that, these folks have got all of their stuff done, all of their problems taken care of, and they're ready to rock and roll.
Well, that's awesome. So our guests are showing up as they get their headsets on. We'll get them on screen here. Dale, do you got any other issues you want to discuss just briefly that came on the legislature today while we get our guest set up here? I want to talk about fireworks, since fireworks is a short subject, and we can wait till it gives our guests time to get set up. As you know, fireworks were banned by the legislature a few years ago. Not fireworks, excuse me. Bottle rockets. The sale of bottle rockets was banned by the legislature a few years ago, and there is a bill sponsored by Representative Blair Thorson. He's a Republican from Fargo, to allow for the sale of bottle rockets in North Dakota. You can sell them, and you can see the current law. You can't sell them, but you can possess them and you can shoot them off. But you can't, if you own them, you can't sell them. Now this bill would allow the sale of bottle rockets, and there's another bill also sponsored by Representative Thorson that would open a new window for selling fireworks in North Dakota from December 29th through December 31st. Right now, the window for selling fireworks in North Dakota is from June 27th through July 5th. And that's when you can sell fireworks in North Dakota. And Blair's bill would allow sales of fireworks also from December 29th through December 31st. Nice. Well, I tell you what, I live out in Lincoln. I think it looks like downtown Baghdad when I saw the on CNN one time. There is so much fireworks going on out there. I think I'm going to leave town next time they do that. So I like fireworks, but it's pretty dangerous out there.
We have a gentleman here this evening to discuss the week that was in the legislature. We have Andy Peterson, who is the president of the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce, and we have Kelvin Hullet, who is the president of the Bismarck Mandan Chamber of Commerce. Gentlemen, one of the things that really intrigues me, and this just came up today, is the prospect of the November 2014 election being dominated by the issue of abortion. The Senate today approved putting on the ballot an amendment that says essentially that life will be protected from conception until death. And this has a number of implications for public policy, particularly for, whether it's legal to get an abortion in North Dakota. And the House still has to vote on this amendment, and if the House approves it, it will get on the ballot, and I would give it better than an even shot at getting through the House. And if this does happen, we will have a constitutional amendment on the November 2014 ballot about whether to ban abortion in North Dakota. And as far as political issues are concerned, at this point it won't have a lot of competition because there's no governor's race up next year. There's no Senate race. There's a race for Congress and Attorney General and a few of the more minor state offices, and that's pretty much it. So it'll be interesting to have a situation in North Dakota politically next year where the political oxygen is sucked up by abortion rather than the U.S. Senate or another race, another race between people or another issues race. And I'll be interested to hear these gentlemen's opinion on whether they think that that's a valid analysis and whether, what they think that it will do for the reputation of North Dakota nationally. North Dakota, to the extent it's known nationally, is known now as an oil producer and a job creator and economic growth and all of that good stuff. And now we might be headed for the eventuality that we're going to be the talk of the nation about abortion, which is interesting, an interesting subject to be affiliated with.
Well, South Dakota just went to that a couple years ago, and
that's true.
It created all kinds of challenges. So they'll probably just figure maybe it's what we drink in our water up here. Who knows? So,
yep.
So anyway, shoot away, Dale.
Mr. Anderson, what do you think about that?
Peterson.
Excuse me, Peterson.
That's all right. I've been called way worse.
Oh boy!
I think
today that's a great start, isn't
it? Dale, I think that it will suck a lot of oxygen out of the room, and from my perspective at the Greater North Dakota Chamber, and I'll let Kelvin speak to the Bismarck Mandan Chamber. We're really about business and business issues, and oftentimes feel a little frustrated when we start talking about these kinds of things that take us off topic. North Dakota's got so much going for it right now. I'm not saying that this is a valid or invalid argument. I'm saying is that it will suck a lot of our energy, and I'd rather talk about economic issues.
Yeah, I did sit in and just listen to part of the debate today in the Senate just out of curiosity. And there was very impassioned arguments on both sides of that issue as you listen to it, and some interesting amendments that came from the floor related to the whole issue of if you move forward with this. I know on one of the bills they attached some sort of a fiscal note to it that then got kicked over to appropriations, and so yeah, I think if this does come to the ballot next year, you're right, it will dominate the discussion, and I don't know how that will play out as far as what North Dakotans will think.
To keep with the social issues theme, we are going to have, it appears, an interesting debate about whether or not to put sexual orientation on the list of things that employers that cannot be used to discriminate against someone in terms of employment and housing and
right. Extension
of credit. And in fact, Mr. Peterson, the GNDC, testified in favor of this bill.
That is correct.
And it's how comfortable are you? You mentioned that you don't like to you prefer not to get involved in social issues,
right.
and this is a frankly a big one. And
this is a big one, and the reason that we testified in favor of this is that many companies already have these kinds of policies and practices in place already. And I mentioned in my testimony before the committee that the last step of the hiring process at the Greater North Dakota Chamber is a group interview. One, we want to see how people do in a group situation. But before that group interview happens, we have this discussion. We can't ask about if someone is married. We can't ask if they have children. There's so many things we can't ask about. We can't ask about this. And Little John, who is really Big John, and for those who don't know him, is an attorney by trade, and of course he is the one who warns us severely about these things.
Mr. Peterson, by the way, is referring to a gentleman who's about 6'8" tall, who is one of the lobbyists for the GNDC.
Right, actually 6'11".
6'11"?
6'11", yes.
My goodness.
He's a big guy.
He's tall.
So we have this discussion, and we make sure that we don't do that. My point is that we hire for talent and not about sexual orientation, not about religion, not about marital status, not about gender. It's about who's got the best talent, the best skills, the best credentials for that job, and then do they fit with us, and can they get along?
And just so that I wanted to throw in as well, the word that you used during your testimony was pragmatic. Business is pragmatic. Business cares about whether you can do the job. Mm-hmm. Are you good at the job? They don't care if you're Jewish or if you're black or if you're gay or if you're female or male. Can you do the job? And we also, one of the testifiers at the hearing was a spokesperson for the Association of Realtors in North Dakota, Klaus Lemke, and Klaus just said, we care about whether you can pay your loan. Can you buy a house? That's what we care about.
That's the bottom line. That's the pragmatic piece of it. So that is where we go.
We are broadcasting live from Peacock Alley. We've been talking to GNDC. I think we're going to keep you guys around after break if you can for a little bit. We still got a little slow getting going here, so if we appreciate if you would want to stay a little longer, that'd be good.
Absolutely.
And so this is Gary Emineth with Dale Wetzel broadcasting live from Peacock Alley. We come back from the break, we will continue our discussion. Sure. Welcome back to Peacock Alley. This is Gary Emineth with your host, Dale Wetzel. We're going to have a busy 30-minute segment here, Dale, as we bring in some guests and do a shift change here halfway through it. So we're going to get right into it. So shoot away.
We're speaking this evening with Andy Peterson. He's the president of the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce. Kelvin Hullet, who's the president of the Bismarck Mandan Chamber of Commerce. And joining us is Representative Marie Strinden. She is a Democrat from Grand Forks, a member of the House Government and Veterans Affairs Committee. One of the bills that the committee heard this morning has to do with spending a boatload of money on a new governor's residence, $3 million for a governor's residence and conference center. And I'm wondering if this, the legislature's been taking some hits for, the idea that they're spending too much money already.
Dale, I was just thinking as you're getting kind of ready here, I noticed last time we had a couple of legislators on, Republican conservatives, and they referred to that $3 million as the kitty. I'm thinking that sounds like a pretty big kitty to me.
Yeah, it's a big kitty, an overweight kitty. I was wondering if this would become almost like a symbol of spendthriftness if the legislature, chucks in $3 million for a new governor's residence.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. The governor was asked the other day at our luncheon about that residence, and he said, Betsy and I are pretty comfortable in the residence we have. You would expect him to say that. But, if you take a larger look at governor's residences across our nation, some of them are pretty opulent. I'm not saying that we need opulent. North Dakota is known to be conservative, and if you have money, you don't show it. So there might be some middle ground somewhere along the line. I do understand the need for the governor to be able to entertain folks, in the residence, and that it's got to be functional. Now, I've not been in this residence, so I can't talk to that. I'll tell you that I think of the residences that I've seen out there, I think this governor's residence is pretty conservative. So, it depends on how it plays out, Dale. I think if it plays out and there's some compromise met, I think it'll be fine. I think if they get the whole $3 million without any compromise, that will be controversial.
What do you think, Kelvin?
Well, the other thing I look at, and I think back to my time in Nebraska when I look at this governor's residence, is the safety issue. I was in Nebraska, very similar kind of a situation. The governor's residence was very open, and then all of a sudden a box showed up on the back door that the bomb squad blew up, which happened to be, a little lady from western Nebraska had brought in some Christmas presents for the governor and put him on his back step because he wasn't home. And so at that point, a fence went up around the governor's mansion. And I look at our existing governor's mansion, and I think that probably when I think about safety and security, there's probably some more that we could do there. Now, whether that means we tear it down and build a whole new one or not, I don't know, but I do think there's probably some improvements that need to be made.
Representative Strinden, can you describe to us the hearing on this bill and what the reaction was to it?
It was suggested that North Dakota might be having a little bit of South Dakota governor's mansion envy because they just got a big new governor's mansion.
It looks like a hunting lodge.
It does. I looked it up while we were in committee, and it looked really big. But what they would use for the money to build the new governor's mansion out of would be the Capitol Grounds Fund, which has $3 million in it now, and then they would hope to raise an extra $1.5 million of private money, which means that it could be perceived or it could be true that the governor's mansion is up for sale. So you always have that issue when you're accepting private money.
Well, maybe there'll be a logo on the outside.
It's possible.
Naming rights for
That's
the governor's
naming
residence.
rights.
Maybe Miller Lite. Greater North Dakota Chamber could take that on.
Budweiser. There you go.
So it's not a bad program because it really wouldn't take any money out of the general fund. Although if you spent all the money from the Capitol Grounds Fund on the governor's mansion, then there wouldn't be any left in there for a while. It is self-replenishing to work on the other things. But Kevin's absolutely right. It needs to be ADA accessible. There's protection issues there. The Office of Management and Business came in and testified against building a new governor's mansion, and they swore that it was their opinion, not the governor giving them their opinion. And they said that they could fix the things that need to be fixed out of a few $100,000 over the next couple bienniums out of that capital fund, or the Capitol Grounds Fund. So we'll see what happens. It could go either way.
What do you think, Representative Strinden, what do you think would be the public reaction if the new governor's residence in North Dakota was, frankly, a large and elaborate structure?
I would hope that they would keep the current kind of hominess of the building. I think that it really reflects North Dakota well. It's simple. It's built with some traditional materials.
It's not pretentious in any way.
It's not pretentious, and I think it really reflects North Dakota.
Right.
The problem with public perception, I think, is that we have this new Heritage Center that's going to have a huge room that can hold thousands of people, and do we really need another executive event center attached to the governor's mansion? The governor says no, so we'll see what the legislature thinks.
But really, no governor would want this on his or her watch. Only a governor in his or her last term would be able to do that. And so I think all the stars would have to line up in order to make this thing happen. You'd have to have a large budget surplus. We have that. It'd have to be the last term of the governor, maybe the last 2 years. All those kinds of things have got to work to make that kind of thing happen. But I think overall some improvements need to be made. And to the safety point, I mean, you can drive right in there right now and knock on the governor's front door.
And people do.
Yes.
Exactly.
It is the people's mansion. It's a state building. It's on our capital. Our capital should be maintained and kept beautiful. And there are definitely projects that need to be fixed in there. Does it need an exercise room with a sauna? I would say no. Does it need ADA accessibility and maybe some landscaping out back for parties? Yes.
But to the exercise room, this guy is this governor, any governor, he or she is going to be in a very public environment. And so to the point of the exercise room, wouldn't it be nice, if you're that public, to be able to go home and exercise in a place like that? They're not going to go down to Gold's Gym or to Anytime Fitness. I mean, Kelvin can't even go to those places and be left alone. Imagine the governor walking in and trying to exercise in a place like that.
I have to tell a story on this one. When I first met Governor Olson, the first North Dakota governor I met, he was naked. He was in the YMCA men's health club, and he'd knocked his glasses off the counter, and I bent over to pick them up and hand him his glasses, and I didn't know it was the governor until I stood up, and there he was. And here, Governor, here are your glasses. And he was there shaving his face just like a normal person, and it was really interesting to encounter the governor in such a in a public setting like that.
Yeah, and that's my point. I mean, it would be nice for a governor, any future governor, to have that kind of ability to operate.
Have some privacy.
Yeah, to have some privacy. I mean, their life is very private. There's no weekends involved, wherever they go. So I can see some of these things as important to a governor.
One of the things that, and Representative Strinden mentioned this, that kind of makes me a little bit sad, is the security aspect. I mean, obviously a new building, a new residence would have more security than the present residence does, and that's too bad, because I do like the fact that you can go up
and knock on
the governor's door. I mean, that's not smart.
Yeah, they
really.
make restraining orders for that kind of thing.
It's nice.
But this is North Dakota. We have access to our legislators.
I do like that, but in the light of all the security in this world, I could see a little more security. I really could.
I should say we shouldn't have access to our legislators in their own homes when we're not invited.
Exactly.
But it does reflect the people of North Dakota right now, and it does need more security. But I like some of the hominess of it.
Yeah, I do too.
The one of the proposals we wanted to talk a minute about the Legacy Fund for college scholarships, and the Legacy Fund is essentially it's an oil trust fund that's going to be building up until 2017. It's 30% of oil tax collections, and there is a proposal, a constitutional amendment that would divert some of that money, earmark some of that money is a better term, to college scholarships. And Representative Strinden, what do you think? I mean, this is part of the thinking process of what do you do with this money once you have it, once you start having it built up, and how meritorious of an idea is it to put it toward college scholarships?
First of all, college scholarships are one of the most important things to me. We have such a surplus right now, and we can invest in nothing better than early education, grade school, high school, higher education. With that said, there was talk in our committee that it is too early to A, open the door to planning spending on what we're going to be doing in 2017. B, the people have set aside this legacy fund. But when they did that, it was so that the legislature could spend it in the next few years, starting in 2017. So do we want to start having initiated measures where the people keep telling us how they want to spend that money? That would be fine. I want to serve the people. $10 million might not be enough in 2017, and so do we go back to the people and do we ask for more money for college scholarships? And I guess it's a great idea. I think it's too early.
Okay. I would concur, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. It's too early. I think it sets a precedent for initiated measures or any kind of thing that would come forward and try to change the will of the people who said, let's set money aside, let's invest in our future, and there we go. So I really believe that it is too early as well.
I guess I make it a unanimous opinion because I would say the same thing. We set the legacy fund up. 2017 is when we can spend the interest. This is kind of like breaking in and taking your second mortgage out a little bit early on your house. And so I would agree. I think it's a great idea, but I think, we wait till 2017 when we can access those funds with the legislature.
I was thinking that's a problem for future Representative Strinden. Representative Strinden in 2013 doesn't need to start allocating the legacy funds.
Good point. Good point.
We have joining us now Representative Ben Koppelman. He's a Republican from West Fargo. And he is a member, as is Representative Strinden, of the House Government and Veterans Affairs Committee. One of the things that the Government and Veterans Affairs Committee was dealing with today was a rather interesting voting bill. And as I read it, first of all, Representative Koppelman, would you just tell me how the hearing went on this bill and what the bill does?
Well, thank you. It's House Bill 1275.
Yes.
And what the bill does is the bill would allow for anybody who doesn't have ID at the polling place and can't verify their identification in the ways prescribed by law. Right now they're able to fill out an affidavit and then vote. And in the aftermath of that, if they were to be somebody that is interested in committing voter fraud, there would really be no way to take their vote away, take it out of the box per se. And so they would just have to be prosecuted for that, and the vote would still count. Under this bill is asking that we create a provisional process where they're still allowed to vote, their vote's put in an envelope, and then when they can come back to the polling place later that day, or in the days following that up until the canvassing board meets, they can come back in and then prove their identity and have their vote counted.
Thank you for that summary. The interesting bit about North Dakota voting process now is, I think it's fair to say that folks believe that there is a requirement that you bring identification to the polls. But the truth is, you're encouraged to bring identification to the polls. The folks at the polling place ask you to show a driver's license. They ask you to show photo ID. But when it comes right down to it, you do not have to have identification to vote. But what you do have to do, if you don't have identification, is you have to sign an affidavit attesting that you are an eligible voter. And this is the crux of the bill that Representative Koppelman just described. Right now, under the current system, I can show up, sign an affidavit. I could be as phony as a $3 bill. And I could sign an affidavit, and my vote gets thrown into the pot right then with the rest of the votes because I have signed a sworn statement saying that I am eligible to vote. What the bill that Representative Koppelman just described will do is it requires you to fill out an affidavit and give more information now than you are required to do. And you also eventually have to produce some form of proof of who you are.
Sure.
You either have to go back and bring it back to the polling place on that day, or you have to do it afterwards before the canvassing board meets to certify your local vote tally. And this is a major change to the way things are done presently. Representative Strinden, what were your thoughts on that?
I think that this is a well-intentioned bill. I don't think it's necessary. The Secretary of State has testified against a number of the voting bills that we're looking at in the GVA committee right now. And I believe it was the Secretary of State that said that out of 10,000 affidavits in the state, they're looking into one for voter fraud. And the way they do that is after you vote and they count your ballot, then they have your affidavit there, and the Secretary of State will mail a postcard to you. If the postcard comes back, then they'll start investigating it. Of course, that doesn't involve IDs, but neither does sending out absentee ballots. They assume that if it's mailed to you, it gets to the house, you vote and send it back, then there's not a problem. And I feel like anything that's going to stop people from being able to easily vote, I'm not going to vote for right now unless you can really demonstrate voter fraud. And I just haven't seen that.
See, that's the big crux here, and I want our guests to comment on this. Mr. Peterson, do you think that there's a lot of voter fraud in North Dakota?
I don't know if there's a lot of voter fraud. I think Representative Koppelman's bill might be a tad clumsy. But that said, I'm not against showing my ID when I vote. When I use my credit card and somebody says, "Can I see your ID?" I say, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Because how many times do you swipe your credit card and no one even looks at it? My number seems seemingly stolen on a regular basis. I was in Chicago recently, and somebody was using my credit card at Amazon.com, and it wasn't me. And
I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I had to change all that. So I think as a society, here's my opinion.
You overcharged me for his credit card number,
I'm
too.
Sorry.
As a society, we're used to showing our ID. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that it's a detriment to people coming in. And if you can't come up with an ID, an envelope with your name and address on it, and that kind of thing. So I don't know.
I don't think that I would oppose a bill that required people to have an ID if it was made so that you could show a college ID or make it easy for people, because not everybody has their driver's license. The problem with this bill in particular is it's a two-step process. So if you come in, you vote, then you have to come back physically somewhere with your ID.
Part. Yeah,
and it's not good for students. It's not great for people that live on the Air Force
senior
base.
Citizens,
yeah, for
maybe.
senior citizens.
We should point out that it's not Representative Koppelman's bill. It is sponsored by Representative Jim Casper of Fargo, although Representative Koppelman is chairman, I believe, of a subcommittee that's going to be looking into this bill.
Sure. That's correct, and I should probably correct a couple things here. First of all, when a vote is questioned, an affidavit is questioned, that's actually being done at the county level.
Yes.
And I believe the numbers that Representative Strinden was referring to was Burleigh County that is looking into one. But the main reason why the Secretary of State was coming out in opposition to this bill was the clumsy nature of it.
Sure.
And the other concepts of, well, what do you do with the ballots if they never come back and prove their ID? And do you store them? Do you destroy them? Who does that? And those sort of things. In his testimony, he actually suggested an amendment to this bill. It wasn't written out, but the concept of an amendment which would simply say, you know what, you can't vote unless you've proved your identity. So if you,
I like that.
you know, the law requires that you provide three things: an ID that proves your name, your date of birth, and your voting address, your current address that you're claiming as residency. And that can be done through a multiple of different documents.
Sure.
And for example, a student ID that had your picture on it may be able to be considered. I would have to look, but certainly state-issued IDs are.
Yes.
And any sort of government-issued ID, any sort of utility bill is able to be used as an address proof. I'm being told, and we're still researching while working on this bill, but I'm being told that if you live in a dorm at a college campus, you can get something from the college that says you paid for your dorm for that fall semester.
Student ID, yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be an ID. It would actually be something showing, because not all students live on campus.
Okay, fair enough.
But this would show that, hey, I've paid for my dorm, therefore that's my residence. So if you had your driver's license from Bismarck, but you're attending NDSU, you'd have your picture and your date of birth on your driver's license. Your college would be able to provide you with that document saying you paid your bill for your dorm. There you've made the three requirements. Now you can vote. So that's what the Secretary of State's kind of hinting towards, and we're going to research that a little more.
Sure.
One of the things that's interesting about this is that there are a lot of forms of photo ID, and Representative Strinden mentioned student IDs. Like I have a passport card, and it doesn't have my address on it, but it is proof allegedly that I am a U.S. citizen, and I'm older than 18 because it has my birth date on it, but it doesn't have my address on it. And so I'll need to bring along my utility bill or something else that shows my address, and then I can vote.
I'm not a big fan of the slippery slope argument because, the legislature won't let anything happen without making decisions about it in law. But like I said, I probably would support a broad having to show your ID before you vote bill. I'd have to see the bill first. But I'm afraid that would lead to them thinking maybe it would be a good idea to have voter registration. And one of the great things about North Dakota, and we were talking about this with the governor's mansion, is that we haven't proven much, if any, voter fraud in the state. It's still a state where you can trust people, and we don't really have any voting problems right now. But I'm really excited to see what comes out of the subcommittee because, like we said, the bill is clunky, and they might come up with some great amendments.
Well, another bill, and I don't know if you had the hearing on this today, but there is another bill that actually would change eligibility in terms of how long you need to live in North Dakota in order to vote here. Right now you need to live in a place 30 days before the election. You need to live for 30 days in a place in order to vote in that precinct before the election. This bill says you need to live in a place from the day that absentee ballots can be issued until the election. And it adds probably another 40 days to the residency requirement. You have to live in North Dakota for maybe 3 months maximum instead of 1 month before you can vote.
I think that's a bit clunky because, all of a sudden, when is that?
Yeah. I mean,
where 30 days is 30 days. To me, that makes perfect sense. And, if you're in North Dakota for 30 days, that can cut across a lot of lines. And I'm totally in favor of the 30 days.
I am too. And when we were in committee, I think it was the Secretary of State said that you have to have lived in the state for 30 days before you vote. So if you get an absentee ballot, you can't get one unless you've lived there for 30 days. If you vote on election day, you have to have lived there for 30 days. So people aren't getting absentee ballots before they have established their residency there.
That's a good point.
But I'm not sure that's actually correct. If you read law, what law says is that to be an eligible elector or voter, you have to be living somewhere 30 days prior to an election, and that's defined as a general, a special, or a primary election. And so although I know what testimony you're referring to, I don't think that's entirely correct. I think you could live there. You could actually be moving somewhere and attest that you're going to be a qualified elector by election day on your application for an absentee ballot. Send it in 2 weeks before you move there. As long as you've moved there by that date, you're technically legal. And I think that's what the bill drafter of that bill was trying to get at, is saying, this is not, you're stating that you're going to be an eligible elector before you actually are in order to get that ballot. Now, I agree with Representative Strinden in the sense that I don't think that it's likely going to go anywhere because it's really hard to define.
Right.
But I do believe the bill sponsor is looking at a pretty major amendment to try to kind of change the intent of that bill as well.
no matter what statute says, the Secretary of State said in practice they're not sending out absentee ballots until somebody establishes residency. So maybe we have to look at a different part of the statute and see what's there and make sure that that's actually what they're doing in practice. The same subgroups that would be hurt by this bill that we're talking about now are the ones that would be hurt by the ID bill as it stands now, which are students who live in a place for 9 months out of the year but wouldn't be able to vote because they might be home visiting their parents for the summer, people on Air Force bases, the elderly, and so that's another bill that we'll have to see some pretty serious amendments before I think it represents my district.
We've been speaking this evening with Representative Marie Strinden. She's a Democrat from Grand Forks. She's the woman whose voice you just heard. Also, Representative Ben Koppelman, a Republican from West Fargo. Representative Koppelman and Representative Strinden are new members of the legislature, just elected last year. We've also been speaking to Representative Andy Peterson.
Wow, you're moving up, Senator.
President Andy Peterson, not President of the United States, President of the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce. He is the President of the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce. And Kelvin Hullet, who is the President of the Bismarck Mandan Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to be back shortly to discuss another set of issues.